I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
The appointment was supposed to take less than a minute. A prepared document waited beside King Charles. A silver pen rested beneath his hand, and Queen Camilla's name had already been placed where palace officials expected his signature to follow. Then Princess Anne stepped forward. Without raising her voice, she stopped the king from appointing his wife as a Royal Foundation trustee without a formal council vote, and the silence that followed was more dangerous than any public argument. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles entered the private meeting believing everything had been cleared. The Royal Foundation, one of the monarchy's most visible charitable organizations, directs campaigns, distributes funding, and shapes causes associated with the crown. A trustee helps guide those decisions, meaning Camilla's appointment would give her influence over money, priorities, and public purpose. Council members had received prepared folders. Her duties were printed into the agenda. An empty chair waited beside the monarch as though debate were unnecessary. Anne saw the danger. The Princess Royal, the king's sister and an experienced working royal, watched him lower the pen. Then she intervened. Camilla could not be appointed, she said, until the full council debated the nomination and recorded a vote. Charles stopped mid-motion. His fingers tightened around the silver pen, while his sister held his gaze. In one sentence, she placed duty against loyalty and procedure against blood. Camilla did not move. She removed her hand from the waiting chair, and expectation hardened into humiliation. The queen consort had entered believing the position was hers. Now advisors had witnessed Anne deny the certainty Charles had offered her. Anne opened a marked copy of the Foundation Charter, the governing document explaining how the institution must operate. One clause required every trustee appointment to receive a recorded council vote. Yet that clause did not appear in the shortened briefing delivered to the king that morning. William leaned toward Charles's file and noticed something worse. The missing page had not disappeared. It had been folded inward, hiding the rule while leaving the document complete. The prince looked from the page to the advisors, and suspicion replaced surprise. Charles set the pen down. He looked first at Anne, then at Camilla, and finally at the officials who had expected obedience. The appointment was stopped, but a darker question now controlled the room. Who believed the monarch could be guided into approving it without resistance? To understand why Anne confronted her brother before the council, the private stakes surrounding Charles, Camilla, William, and the Princess Royal now had to be exposed. This was never merely a dispute over paperwork. For Charles, the appointment represented trust in the woman who had stood beside him through decades of judgment. For Camilla, it promised recognition that could no longer be dismissed as ceremonial. For William, it threatened to redraw the boundaries of a foundation tied to the monarchy's future. And for Anne, it tested the principle she had defended all her life. The crown survives only when personal wishes stop at institutional doors. Charles had viewed the proposed trusteeship as the natural reward for years of public service. A trustee was not simply an honorary figure, but someone able to influence charitable priorities, funding decisions, and the causes attached to the royal name. Before the meeting, the king told Camilla in private that the position would prove she was no longer standing beside the monarchy as a supporting figure. She would be helping direct where it went next. Camilla wanted to believe him. As she fastened a brooch before leaving, the queen consort quietly asked whether the council would make the appointment difficult. Charles assured her that everything had been settled. His confidence calmed her, but it also made what followed feel far more brutal. When Anne stopped the signature, she did not merely delay a role. In Camilla's mind, the Princess Royal had exposed her in front of the people who had already been told to expect her authority. William felt a different kind of alarm. The prince had spent years treating the foundation as part of the monarchy's long future, especially because its campaigns could one day define his reign and Catherine's public work. Yet he had learned of Camilla's nomination only the night before. That timing was no accident. It gave him almost no chance to study the rules, question the process, or understand how much influence the appointment would create. Anne felt no triumph. She stood alone in a side corridor, gripping the charter against her chest, the governing document that set out how the foundation had to operate. She knew Charles would see defiance where she had intended protection. She also knew silence would have allowed a dangerous precedent to become permanent. The warning had reached her days earlier. a senior council member had slipped a handwritten note into her briefing folder, stating that Camilla's appointment was being presented to Charles as a completed decision and that the required vote was being pushed aside. The message gave Anne no room to pretend she had misunderstood. Charles found her near a closed drawing room door. Hurt sharpened his voice as he asked why she had chosen to challenge him in front of Camilla. Anne held his gaze and answered that she had stopped the document, not the king. But Charles heard almost no difference. Camilla then demanded the complete charter. She read one provision twice, and her anger changed into something colder. The trusteeship carried far greater authority than she had been told. The position mattered more than Camilla had understood, but the true cause of the crisis had begun weeks earlier, during one ceremony that turned Anne's concern into certainty. 3 weeks before Anne stopped the signature, a charity reception at St. James's Palace appeared to end in triumph. Camilla had delivered a warm address, Charles had praised her commitment, and Foundation executives had gathered around them with polished smiles. Yet one conversation after the guests departed changed everything. Anne overheard a senior advisor promise Camilla that she would soon have a permanent hand on the wheel, and in that instant, the Princess Royal understood that an appointment was already being constructed behind the council's back. Camilla had been warmly received that evening. The reception supported a new national initiative focused on literacy, youth welfare, and community aid, causes that carried both public appeal and royal influence. Charles watched the Queen speak with confidence and believed her formal place inside the Foundation would seem natural. To him, the praise around her was proof that the public would accept the appointment. Anne noticed something else. As a long-serving royal patron, meaning a senior royal who publicly supports charities and causes, she understood how these institutions worked. Foundation executives repeatedly pulled Camilla into discussions about future budgets, long-term campaigns, and trustee responsibilities. Even though the council had never seen a formal nomination, the conversation sounded less like possibility and more like preparation. The turning point came after the guests had gone. Anne entered a quiet antechamber and heard the Foundation's executive secretary speaking privately with Camilla. He assured her that Charles would approve the trusteeship before the next council session and dismissed the later vote as unnecessary administrative theater. A trusteeship meant real governing influence over the Foundation, not merely a ceremonial title. Camilla did not reject the plan. She asked whether William had been informed. When the secretary answered that the prince would learn after the king signed, she fell silent. Anne heard every word, and the feeling that gripped her was colder than anger. The process was not being rushed by accident. It was being designed to become irreversible. Anne confronted Charles later that evening. She warned him beside the fireplace that advisors were using his trust in Camilla to force an appointment past the council. The king dismissed the warning as another sign that his sister had never fully accepted his wife. His words cut deeply. Anne had spoken about procedure, yet he answered as though she had attacked Camilla personally. Anne refused to retreat. She reviewed earlier trustee appointments and found that every previous nomination had been circulated in advance, debated by the council, and entered into formal minutes. The written record of official decisions. Camilla's was the only nomination prepared for immediate signature. Then Anne found the draft announcement. It already described Camilla as a trustee, with a release time set only minutes after the private meeting. She underlined that time, called William, and said, "They intend to make the decision before anyone is allowed to question it." William agreed to attend, but warned that Charles might see their resistance as a family rebellion. Anne answered that silence would be worse. By the time the council assembled, Anne was no longer acting on instinct. She was carrying proof, and Charles was about to discover how far she would go. Once the advisors were dismissed, the argument stopped being constitutional and became painfully personal. Charles remained at the head of the table, Camilla stood beside the chair she had expected to occupy, and Anne faced them with the charter open in her hands. No cameras recorded what followed. No courtiers softened the language. A king accused his sister of humiliating his wife. A princess accused her brother of confusing devotion with authority, and an old family wound broke open beneath the weight of the crown. Charles ordered every non-essential member of staff to leave the council chamber. The council chamber was the private room where senior members examined and approved major Foundation decisions. William remained because the organization's future was closely tied to his public role, while the executive secretary was told to wait outside. The door closed. The people who had shaped the process were suddenly separated from the family, now forced to confront its consequences. Anne spoke first. She made it clear that she was not opposing Camilla's right to be nominated. The Queen could present her case, answer questions, and seek support like any other candidate. What Anne rejected was an appointment made without scrutiny, recorded discussion, or the vote demanded of every trustee. To her, the difference was not technical. It was the line between legitimate authority and personal favor. Charles struck the table with the flat of his hand. The sound was not loud, but the anger behind it was unmistakable. He asked why his judgment could be trusted in matters affecting the nation, yet questioned the moment his wife was involved. The king's voice carried more hurt than rage. He believed Anne was not merely challenging a decision. He believed she was rejecting his marriage and weakening his position before his own family. Camilla turned toward Anne. She asked whether the Princess Royal would have intervened so dramatically if another royal had been nominated. Anne answered yes without hesitation. But the Queen's expression tightened. She heard the words, yet she did not believe them. Charles stepped away from his chair until only a few feet separated him from his sister. He told her that loyalty should have brought her to him privately. Anne did not retreat. She reminded him that she had tried, and that he had dismissed her warning as hostility toward Camilla. William then placed the shortened briefing beside the complete charter. The prince pointed to the missing voting clause and showed that it had been removed from the king's version. Charles studied both pages. His anger shifted. Camilla finally admitted that she knew a vote would come later, but believed the signature would make it a formality. Her words exposed the truth. Once announced, the appointment would become almost impossible to reverse. Charles called the executive secretary back inside. He held up the two documents and asked, "Who authorized the removal of this clause?" The family confrontation had exposed the wound, but the answer would reveal who had tried to use the king's trust. The executive secretary entered expecting to explain a procedural shortcut. Instead, he found Charles holding two versions of the same document, and Anne watching him with absolute stillness. The room had changed. Camilla's nomination was no longer the central issue. The altered briefing had become evidence of a deeper manipulation. Someone had calculated that the king's affection, the queen's ambition, and the family's reluctance to create a scandal would be enough to carry an unvoted appointment across the line. Charles understood why the council existed. The Royal Foundation Council was the group responsible for approving senior appointments and protecting the charity's independence. Its trustees could authorize campaigns, oversee grants, represent the institution, and shape priorities that might continue into the next reign. That made every appointment more than a title. It created lasting influence over money, reputation, and royal purpose. The executive secretary began to speak, but his hands betrayed him. He explained that a senior palace advisor had requested a simplified briefing, so the king would not be burdened with procedural details. Charles slowly removed his glasses. The monarch said nothing at first, yet the silence around him carried controlled fury. Someone had decided what he needed to know. Worse, someone had decided what he should not see. Camilla felt the humiliation deepen. The Queen asked whether the advisors had truly wanted to strengthen her position, or whether they had planned to use her name to seize greater control over the foundation. Her eagerness had made her vulnerable. What she had accepted as recognition now looked dangerously close to manipulation. Anne felt vindicated, but no triumph reached her voice. The Princess Royal saw the embarrassment on Charles's face and lowered her tone. She told him the charter had not weakened his authority. It had protected him from signing a decision others had engineered in his name. William searched the remaining papers. The prince found meeting records showing that several council members had already objected to expanding royal influence over the foundation. Those concerns had been removed from Charles's briefing. Then he discovered something even more serious: a proposed governance amendment attached to Camilla's appointment. The amendment was a formal change to the rules controlling the institution. Once the Queen became a trustee, it would allow two royal trustees acting together to fast-track future appointments without full council debate. The disputed signature was not the end of the plan. It was the doorway. Charles took the amendment. He did not tear it. He closed the folder firmly and pushed it across the table. The king ordered that the announcement be cancelled, and every email, note, draft, and recorded instruction connected to the appointment be preserved. Camilla turned before he could speak to her. She walked out, leaving Charles caught between following his wounded wife and exposing the scheme built around her. The machinery had been stopped, but Camilla's retreat and Charles's silence were already turning a procedural defeat into a royal family crisis. There was no public announcement, no formal rejection, and no dramatic statement from the palace. Yet everyone closest to the family understood that something had broken. Camilla returned to her private rooms without the trustee folder she had expected to carry. Charles remained inside the council chamber long after the others left. Anne departed through a side corridor alone, and William, standing between their separate silences, recognized that stopping the appointment had protected the foundation while leaving the family dangerously exposed. Palace communications staff moved quickly. They canceled the prepared announcement only minutes before its scheduled release, and contacted charities that had already been told to expect Camilla's new role. The aides described the delay as an internal scheduling matter, but the explanation was fragile. Too many people had seen the wording. Too many calls had already been made. The council deepened the crisis by ordering a formal review of the appointment process and temporarily blocking governance changes. Governance changes were alterations to the rules controlling how the foundation made decisions and distributed authority. The review proved that Anne's objection had been justified, yet it also confirmed that this was no ordinary family disagreement. Something serious had gone wrong. Camilla entered her sitting room in silence. The Queen removed the brooch she had chosen for the expected announcement and placed it beside an unopened speech draft. She told her private secretary to leave. When the door closed, she remained alone with the words she had prepared for a position that was no longer hers. Charles wanted to follow her. The king feared, however, that leaving the council immediately would look like an attack on Anne and an excuse for the altered briefing. He stayed at the table, trapped between his responsibility as a husband and his duty as monarch. Anne received his message before she reached her own rooms. It contained only 5 words. "You could have warned me." The Princess Royal read it twice. She began a reply, deleted it, then tried again. Every sentence sounded like a defense, and she knew Charles was not ready to hear one. The danger widened when aides discovered that the cancelled announcement had already been shared under embargo with selected journalists. An embargo was an agreement preventing information from being published before a set time. Now the palace had to explain why a supposedly confirmed appointment had vanished. Camilla confronted Charles later that evening. She told him she would not submit her name for a council vote, while Anne remained part of that body. Her anger transformed the delay into a direct challenge between 2 royal women. William found Charles alone and placed the original charter before him. The prince did not discuss rules. He simply said, "She stopped them from using you." Charles gave no answer, but his expression softened. The investigation could uncover who altered the documents, but only one private conversation between brother and sister could determine whether the family itself would survive. Charles asked Anne to meet him after dusk in a small private room far from the council chamber. There were no red boxes, no secretaries, no prepared notes, and no place for either of them to hide behind rank. For the first time since she stopped his signature, the king did not ask whether she had embarrassed him. He asked whether she believed he had knowingly broken the rules. Anne's answer would either restore their trust or destroy what remained of it. Charles had chosen a family sitting room linked to their childhood instead of an official office. The choice mattered. An official office would have turned the meeting into another discussion between monarch and senior royal, but this room forced them to speak as brother and sister. Anne arrived without the charter. Charles had left the appointment papers behind. Neither had come to argue over clauses again. The king asked the question he had been avoiding. Did Anne believe Camilla had manipulated him? The Princess Royal answered carefully. She did not believe the Queen had designed the scheme. She believed others had exploited his determination to protect his wife from further rejection. The distinction reached him. His expression changed because blame was no longer being placed solely on Camilla, but neither was his own judgment being excused. Anne admitted that she should have warned him more forcefully before the meeting. She could have demanded that he examine the complete file, yet she reminded Charles that when she raised the danger earlier, he dismissed her concern as hostility toward his wife. The king lowered his eyes and acknowledged that his defensiveness had stopped him from hearing what she was truly saying. Charles then spoke with a vulnerability he had hidden from everyone else. He wanted to give Camilla a role that no one could call borrowed, decorative, or dependent on him. The Queen had spent years beside the monarchy while others questioned whether she belonged there. He wanted the trusteeship to prove her authority was real. His voice faltered as he admitted the painful truth. In trying to protect her dignity, he had nearly allowed advisors to destroy it in public. Anne refused to turn that confession into victory. She revealed that she had never intended to block Camilla permanently. The Queen could present her plans, answer the council's questions, and seek the required majority. Anne would even support her if the process was open and fair. Charles made his decision. No signature would come before a vote. The governance amendment, a proposed change that would have weakened full council control, would be withdrawn forever. He also promised that an independent investigation would examine the altered briefing. Charles reached for Anne's hand before she left. He thanked her for stopping him. Anne held his gaze. "I did not stop you. I stopped a mistake from becoming your decision." Their private battle had ended. But by morning, one front page would turn it into a national argument. At sunrise, newspaper stands carried the image the palace had feared. Charles seated before an unsigned document, Anne standing at his side, and Camilla's empty chair visible in the background. Across the front page ran 4 words in enormous type: "Anne blocks the Queen." Within hours, broadcasters were debating royal loyalty, crowds were gathering near Buckingham Palace, and a private defense of council procedure had become a public referendum on power, marriage, and the future character of the monarchy. Media organizations quickly connected the withdrawn announcement to the private council meeting. Commentators reduced the crisis to a personal battle between Anne and Camilla, turning a dispute over rules into a story of 2 royal women fighting for influence. That framing hid the real danger. The king had received an incomplete briefing, and the council vote had almost been bypassed. Palace staff issued a restrained statement before midday. It confirmed that trustee appointments required council approval, and that no appointment had been finalized. A trustee appointment was the formal process of giving someone authority over a foundation's decisions, funding, and public direction. The wording quietly validated Anne's intervention, but it avoided naming the advisors who had tried to push the decision through. Outside Buckingham Palace, the mood hardened. Supporters held photographs of the Princess Royal, while others defended Camilla and accused the palace of humiliating her. One woman placed a handwritten sign against the railings. It read, "Rules protect the crown." Broadcasters repeated that image throughout the day, and the words began to define the entire crisis. Camilla watched the coverage in silence. A television presenter described the Queen as both a victim of palace manipulation and a beneficiary of attempted favoritism. She switched off the screen before the discussion ended. Hearing strangers question her motives hurt more than the suspended appointment itself. Anne disliked the praise almost as much as Camilla hated the criticism. The Princess Royal instructed her office not to celebrate the headlines and not to brief journalists against the Queen. She had challenged a process, not declared war on her brother's wife. Then the story changed. A national broadcaster revealed through a documented palace briefing that the voting clause had been omitted from Charles's papers. Public anger shifted away from the family feud and toward the advisors who had tried to guide the king through incomplete information. Charles acted before the damage deepened. He authorized the release of the full governance procedure, meaning the official rules controlling appointments and council authority. The monarch confirmed that every future nomination, including Camilla's, would face the same vote. Before leaving for an engagement, Charles paused beside Anne within sight of waiting cameras. Their calm exchange lasted only seconds, but it ended talk of open war. The public battle was contained. Now Camilla had to decide whether she would face a fair vote, and the family had to deliver the final verdict. When the council reconvened, the silver pen was gone. In its place sat 9 voting papers, the complete charter, and a written proposal bearing Camilla's name. No position had been promised. No announcement had been prepared. Charles entered without asking for special treatment. Anne took her seat without triumph, and Camilla faced the council knowing that whatever happened would now be legitimate. The moment that had begun as a family rupture was about to end as a test of whether the monarchy could correct itself. Camilla chose not to withdraw. The Queen submitted a written plan explaining which charitable causes she intended to support and how she would use the role. A formal nomination was the official process through which a candidate was examined, debated, and approved before receiving authority. She also agreed that her performance would be reviewed under the same standards applied to every other trustee. The council did not make the process easy. Members questioned Camilla's workload, independence, priorities, and closeness to Charles. Their scrutiny proved that Anne had not demanded an empty ceremony. She had demanded a real decision, one capable of testing whether the Queen wanted responsibility or merely recognition. Camilla turned toward Anne before the vote. She admitted that accepting a pre-signed appointment would have weakened the very position she hoped to strengthen. The Queen did not apologize for seeking the role, but she acknowledged that the Princess Royal had been right to stop the shortcut. Charles remained silent. The King supported his wife, yet he made no attempt to rescue her from difficult questions or guarantee the outcome. His restraint showed how much had changed. He had learned that protecting Camilla did not mean protecting her from accountability. The ballots were counted in complete silence. Camilla received the required majority and became a trustee through a valid council vote. Anne rose first and offered her hand. The gesture made the truth unmistakable. She had never wanted permanent exclusion. She had wanted legitimacy. The independent review delivered its findings through a documented report. Senior advisors had removed the voting clause and accelerated the announcement to create a public expectation too difficult to reverse. Those responsible were dismissed from foundation governance, and the fast-track amendment was abolished. Charles then ordered every future royal nomination to include full legal briefings, recorded council discussion, and published confirmation of the vote. No monarch, spouse, heir, or advisor would be allowed to repeat the same shortcut. Anne had not weakened Charles. She had protected him from exploitation. Camilla gained authority because she faced scrutiny, not because she escaped it. And the monarchy proved that loyalty was not silent obedience. After the meeting, Charles picked up the same silver pen and placed it in Anne's hand. Nothing more needed to be said. The crisis ended not with Anne defeating Charles or Camilla claiming victory, but with the monarchy choosing accountability over convenience and emerging stronger because one princess had the courage to say no. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.